This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Tired of losing in fantasy sports? Times are changing. Now it's just you versus the numbers. Prize Picks is the perfect place for you whether you are the biggest sports fan around or you're a seasoned vet in the daily fantasy space. On Prize Picks, you simply select 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go over or under their fantasy projection. Think Denny Hamlin is going to win the big race? Take his over and win real cash today. Prize Picks gives you the chance to win 10 times your money for getting 4 predictions correct. Entries are so simple. They can be made in less than 60 seconds. Sign up today at prizepicks.com or on the PrizePicks app and use code DIRTYAIR, that's DIRTYAIR, DIRTYAIR, to get a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. PrizePicks truly is daily fantasy simplified.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dirty Air NASCAR DFS podcast, episode 11, going over the Toyota Owners 400 at Richmond Raceway. I'm Brandon Cruz. Alongside me this evening is Jason of Free NASCAR DFS. Ryan's out of town. He wasn't able to make it this weekend, so it's just Jason and myself. So yet again, back-to-back weeks, just two guys here talking DFS NASCAR. But Jason, how are you doing this week?
I'm feeling really good. I think I've officially became the Iron Man of the Dirty Air podcast now. 11 straight, was this now 10? 11 straight episodes of not missing. I'm like the Cal Ripken Jr. now of this thing. I'm just going to see how long I can go and outlast you guys. But been good, man. It's been a while since I got to talk to you. I know you were gone last week. Hope you had a great vacation. It's nice to have you back, and we'll look forward to seeing Ryan back hopefully next week.
Yeah, it's going to be a dog. It's going to be a rough fight for knocking you off of most career starts here with 11, because Ryan and I are both going to be at 10. But let's see. Do you want to talk about Martinsville a little bit?
Yeah, let's start. Typically where Ryan likes to start us off is Martinsville. His question he likes to typically ask is, was it a good race, Brandon?
So, and it is not my brand to critique NASCAR. I just personally don't like a whole lot of wrecking. And if you look at this year, like all the major races have had wrecks that people say are good. The Busch Clash ended with a wreck. Daytona 500 ended with a big wreck. Atlanta is really the only race that I can think of that was green. Martinsville, we had a period of about 60 laps where guys just kept on turning each other. And it was like, oh, come on, can we get this back green? Oh, come on, what are you guys doing? Nobody's really showing each other any respect. It was entertaining if you're looking at it in a sense of lap leaders or people being able to pass. I suppose it was disappointing, and it really showed with LaJoy and Alfredo and obviously the big wreck on the back straightaway of that these cars are pretty much made out of styrofoam to where they can't really absorb any type of impact that the full contact racing at short tracks provide. But I liked it. It was entertaining. I mean, I like wrecks and stuff.
Yeah, I think that is typically back in the day when I used to go to Bristol, Martinsville, those type of tracks. They would beat and bang. Guys get spun out, turn in the wall, and they would just turn around, beat the fenders out, and be able to keep going and contend. But you had a little bit of that. I mean, you saw Matty D's car. He finished, top 14 with a pretty beat-up race car. I'm not the type that's like, ooh, crashes mean a good race. Like, I hated Daytona. It had big crashes, but I think when it comes to short track racing, this is the type of stuff that packed Bristol. This is the type of racing that made Bristol the great Coliseum, and I think it's good to see races like that every now and then. I mean, to see tempers getting angry and people flipping each other off, and it's fun. Like I said, it's not something you want to probably see every week, and obviously this week's going to be a little different. At Richmond, you get a little bit more of a milder, quote unquote, short track.
Yeah, although I think we can really take away a lot in terms of who had speed at Martinsville and apply that to Richmond. It should be the same guys for being fast.
You are looking a lot into the Martinsville data, more so than Phoenix?
Martinsville, Phoenix, because if you look, guys who were fast at Phoenix, kind of aligned with Martinsville. Obviously, I was not on Hamlin, not necessarily out of fading him. I just didn't see him literally walking away with the race as basically a one dominator aside from Ryan Blaney. But
Yeah,
I
there
think you could take that
typically
away.
is. I think you do see that, like all these obviously tracks, these short flat tracks, they coordinate, they correlate somehow together. But I think Martinsville is a track that there are just some guys who just struggle there, even though they're maybe good at the other tracks. Like Keselowski, like he struggled a little bit there last year, and he struggled there this year. So I don't know if that's something we're going to see. Is just Martinsville, but no concern with Keselowski with coming into this week with how he's ran at Phoenix. I think there's some spots where you want to look at how they ran at Martinsville, but like I don't think you're going to take a guy like Keselowski and say, oh, he ran like shit at Martinsville and be worried about him this week. I think his starting
Really,
position might worry you a little bit more this week.
yeah, starting position is pretty much the only thing that would worry me from here because there's a chance that this race evolves a lot like Martinsville to where you really can't pass the leader and you really can't make up positions very easily. So you might see guys who have a good shot, maybe start inside the second or third row, just not be able to get to the lead and lead laps in the race.
Yeah, and coordinated that guys who start up there who could just hold on to that track position, hopefully. But we see how these races tend to play out. We saw it at Martinsville, and I think at the Xfinity Series, and we saw it a little bit in the Cup Series, where just a little bit of a pit strategy, a pit thing can kind of flip track position for guys, and kind of so keying in on maybe some guys who you know might be able to take advantage of that could be an advantage going into this week.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see because salaries aren't out right now, but I'll be interested to see what price people like Cindric, people like Jones, Briscoe, Priest, Suarez, McDowell, Almirola, all this back half of the field who were running well at Martinsville. They just got caught up in wrecks or got trapped laps down due to either how the wrecks happened or having trouble on pit road. Even someone like Blaney starting, should be around seventh. He had a really fast car, the second best car. It's just that an air hose literally tore off
Yeah.
the side of his car.
Yeah, I think Blaney is going to be a guy that a lot of people are going to probably sleep on this week. That is a mistake because he's always great on these flat tracks, but when you just look at how he ran last year at Richmond, he didn't run very well. And that's what people like to look at, their most recent race at Richmond. But I don't know, he did run really well at Martinsville. Maybe that's in some people's head. But I think Blaney's starting seventh here he's probably going to be priced around like all these guys in this range, which I think that's something we really kind of got into this pretty quickly. But with Richmond, it's 400 laps. It's not quite as many as we saw last week at Martinsville, but it still is going to be a huge emphasis on those dominator points and those not lap leaders, but just guys who are going to be fast and chunk up those hog points, dom points there. I think I said that's probably the first time I think I said.
Yeah, see, there you
the
go.
hog points.
Yeah, and I think you can really look at the guys who were fast at Phoenix throughout the entire race that should arrive fast here at Richmond. Like, for example, I love Kyle Larson this weekend. I don't think he'll be the most expensive. He really cut through the field early at Martinsville and then just kind of got caught up outside of right at 6th, 7th, 8th place during the whole Martinsville race just because the field kept on spraying out. Or in the pit stops, he didn't lose any positions, but he couldn't beat, Hamlin off pit road because they had an advantage entering the pits. And so Larson kind of just deferred to, a 6th place run in that whole race. Him starting 6th here, I mean, he should cut through this field. If it's very similar to the car that he ran at Richmond, I think he should have the fastest car. Or
the car at Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix. He's just super quick at Phoenix. We saw him come to the field 3 times with penalties and just different shit happened to that race, and he still put up 45 fastest laps. You're gonna definitely have to have some of Larson this week. That's just it. Is this is going to be another week we're going to be cramming in 2 to 3 dominators, and it is. If we just looked at the last 3 years of 3 races at Richmond, we saw I think 4 guys scored over 100 points and 8 guys scored over 75, and then all 8 of those guys started inside the top 9. And I think you're going to see a lot of that same this week when you see these guys up here: Truex, Hamlin, Chase, Byron, Logano, Larson, Blaney, Bell. Obviously Bell probably might in there. Bell can run well, but I mean these are their guys who are going to Truex, Hamlin, Chase, Logano, Larson. I know that's a big list there, but out of those guys, who are we thinking? I know you like Larson as your favorite, but obviously who we liking else here? Obviously Truex, I think obviously is going to be very quick. Phoenix, good last week. Hamlin as well.
Yeah, people like Truex. As I already said, I like Larson a lot. Looking at guys who just do well on flat tracks in general, obviously the Penske drivers, Keselowski, Logano would probably be ahead of Blaney in that just because they usually average more top 5 finishes and usually run inside the top 5 a bit more than Blaney does.
But if you're 20 maxing this week and playing combinations of these guys, it's going to be hard to miss the Dominator, right? Like,
Well, I
is there
mean,
anybody outside of here that we think, not the dominator, but it's gonna be hard to miss that 100-point guy. Like, I can't see it coming out outside of that group there.
yeah, I don't see it either unless you pull me and just whiff and just end up with no Hamlin out of not even purposely wanting to fade him. I just didn't see it working at Martinsville. But I'll probably go with the same strategy of just playing everybody that I think can lead laps, and that's going to be people like Trix, Hamlin, Elliott, even Byron. I mean, looking at how what Byron did in that race, the amount of fast laps that he was able to run, battling
Yeah.
basically the entire race for third with somebody, that's impressive to see. But yeah, Logano, Larson, Blaney. I think Bell's really the only guy in the top 10 that I don't really have interest in right now.
Ooh, I like
Only
Bell this week.
only because I think his price is going to go up due to the laps that he was able to run. And I think this is a week that I want to use Harvick and Kyle Busch as like that third hog into my lineups, because we saw with the ownership last week on Harvick and Kyle
Yeah.
Busch, it really wasn't there. Same thing with Larson. I think Larson was at 21% owned. I think he'll be
it's
higher
lower
this
than that,
week.
actually.
Yeah.
I think Larson might have been lower.
Maybe 17, depending on what contest you were in. But if
But I mean,
that's
if
the
we
case,
saw, I mean, I'm looking at the ownership, so across those dominator guys, like it's 33% to 20%. Like, where's the leverage there? Like, it's not the leverage that like we used to have when you'd be playing a guy who was 15% and we had chalk was 49, 50%. So I'm, as they said, dominators, I'm not even really considering ownership. I'm just considering the guys that I think are going to be fast.
I think it's, if you want to look at ownership, I brought it up now for the big GPP last week. You had Larson at 18%, you had Kyle Busch at 17%, you had, where's Harvick at?
I mean, there's a little bit of leverage with, like against
Yeah.
the Truex, but not against like even a Hamlin who, what was he, 20, 26, 27?
Oh yeah, I more mean like if you're gonna play, and the reason why I want to aim for Harvick and Kyle Busch at the bottom of my hog list is because the lineup construction that you come up with,
Price.
that move in the long run in terms of DraftKings or FanDuel or however your lineups are going, whatever contest you're making, those types of move in the long run seem to be profitable. Just in the races that they run well, and only 17% of the field has them, or sub 20% has them. On
Yeah.
top of having different lineup constructions. That's why I like aiming for people in like the 20s or 17 with high upside, which is why Byron was a great play last week at 15%, which I didn't have enough of him. I didn't think he'd hold up there, so that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I kind of wanted to hit on with Byron this year. If we look at his performances this season, in my breakdown, when I track for 2021, I don't even have Daytona or the Bristol Dirt Race in here, so I don't have those stats in front of me. But just if we're just looking at from a value standpoint, he was close to 5x in like 5 of the last 6 races at his price, and he's probably going to price this around the same spot. He's a guy who I just think he's on the verge of kind of breaking out and putting up a big number, and I think you're going to want a little bit of Byron exposure pretty much every week, probably going forward, I would say. I mean, he's been returning pretty solid value at his price, as long as his price don't tick up too much past 9K, which I don't anticipate that happening.
Yeah, and I know Canals moved up to the competition director at Hendrick, but I think Chad really held Byron back. If you look at how he ran the last few years, or at least last year when he had Canals, like we didn't see him even. I mean, Hendrick in general is obviously the best team this year, but Byron, for example, I think he's taken the biggest leap from his subpar performances last year, subpar of like 9th every week, to now where he's consistently been inside the top 7 in speed, 6 in speed throughout every race that we've had.
Yeah,
and
running top 3, running top 4. I mean,
and he's not being priced accordingly.
No, he's definitely not. And just circling back a little bit to like what we're saying about Harvick, I do think Harvick is a guy who you're going to want a little bit of exposure to, like you said, this week, because of that. This is a track he's historically been good at, and we saw he had speed at Phoenix. I know he had some trouble with a flat tire or whatever in the beginning of that race, which kind of dropped him back, which hurts him on his average position, and he didn't have quite the car of Larson did to be able to still turn those fast laps. But he's a guy who especially if you're playing like 150 lineups, like yeah, you're going to definitely obviously want to have Harvick exposure. I'm probably not as heavy. Like I think I threw 15% on him last week in my 20 max, and I'll probably be about that again this week. 15. When you're only playing 20 max, I feel like you still got to be a little bit tighter. But I can understand definitely like you're playing 150 lineups. Yeah, you definitely probably going to be pushing maybe close to 20. But 15% and 150 max is a lot more lineups too. So.
Yeah, I think people need to focus on that as well. I think you and I are both pretty comfortable doing, 15 to 20 lineups on each slate, whether it's Xfinity or Cup Series. And when you see somebody you have like 20% ownership on or 25% ownership on, that's only 4 or 5 lineups. I think people assume that it's way more. Like, oh man, I got 30% so and so. I need to really I need to dial them down. Where in reality, that's only 16 or your 20, or that's only 6 of your 20 lineups. So.
And the other thing you got to pay attention to, like when you're doing your optimizers or however you're making your lineups, is you got to pay attention to how those are correlating. Like you can't just like crunch it out and put those percentages in, because you're going to end up with a lot of lineups looking the exact same. So you really have to pay attention and maybe do like 8. Like I think last week I did like 7 different crunches just to make 20 lineups, just because I wanted to make sure my exposures and my combinations were right.
Oh yeah, and that's, you make projections, I make projections as well. I normally run the highest projected lineup that I come up with just on my base projections, and then after that I just use those projections to use different lineups. Like I'll take out, let's say this week my first projection loves Larson, but I need to make lineups without him, or I need to be heavier on somebody like Martin Truex Jr. So I'll make it not use Kyle Larson. I lose those projected points, but in terms of diversifying my lineups, it shoves in other guys that can make up for that.
Now, do you separate your strongest guys? Like I typically like my guys who I think are like my favorite guys. Like I try not to like have too many combos of them together. Like if I like last week, I really loved Truex and Logano. So like I didn't have many of them paired together because I'm thinking one of them is probably going to explode, and I didn't want to have them both together, because if I think one's going to explode, then I want to have that guy who I think would be sick, like a Blaney, who I think can run well, put up 40 dominator points, not to do as much to hit that value.
So I'm going to answer this in 2 parts, because I think it better helps people understand how I create lineups. So I offer cores, on Patreon for all the series, and in my idea, a core is the quote unquote safest part of my lineup, the ones that I don't really want to worry about. And that's not the dominators for me. That's the value plays that I love and I want to lock in. So the 3 drivers that I give out in my main core is the group of drivers that I'm going to use to pair up with different dominators and whatnot. In terms of what dominators I pair together, it's typically the 2 guys that I like the most. And I just try and I either use the 3 core that I have, the value play, and swap out I have the 2 dominators, obviously, then the 3 guys in the core, so that's 5 lineups or 5 drivers, and then I switch out that 6th play to just get different, either salary, a certain amount of salary left on the table, or just swap guys in and out. Like that's exactly what I did at Atlanta. When I had the lineup that did well there, I had a lot of Kyle Larson and Blaney lineups, and then the only place that I changed was Preece, and then I switched him out in a lineup for Ross Chastain, and then I switched him in a lineup for Chris Buescher, and so I just maximized my outcome if that type of lineup scored well. And so when I play my 20 lineups, the 20 max in the 4, I enter 20 in the 15, normally I would say 12 of those lineups are 4 or they're 3 similar lineups going out in 4 different directions. So it's basically the same lineup being played, 4 times in that 12. Right. And then my last 8 that I use in that 20 max are just lineups that either the optimizer likes or that I like without, using a certain core in the lineups. They're just lineups that I like or that I see that people aren't going in that direction. Hopefully that kind of helps you out.
It makes sense. And I think what you're explaining to people is the amount of like variance you're putting in across your lines. Like, and this year, I think you picked kind of like with the way as unpredictable as things have been, I've always been like a 3-5 lineup kind of guy. And you're required to make a really tight pool when you're doing that to be effective, because you can't, what's the point of having 5 different duo combos, because you're just going to break even. And then now this year, as hard as it is I'm trying to play as many combos as possible. So it's like you're not putting together 20 lineups thinking you're going to cash 15 of them. And I think that's something you have to realize as you're constructing these lineups. It takes one goddamn lineup. So just because it's like last week, I think I had in the Xfinity series, I whiffed in Xfinity, right? And I didn't play any Ty Gibbs, dumbass move, whatever. But I had one lineup with Ty Gibbs, and it ended up making half my money back.
Yeah, covering you basically.
And some people would say, why make one lineup? Why not just fade them completely? Like, well, you just fucking never know,
Yeah, and I love podcasts like this more, and we'll get back into the Richmond talk in a second. I just love talking about lineup construction, and so I'm very similar in terms of what I aim for my lineups. Like I'm aiming, for the one lineup to do well. I have enough money in my savings right now to where if all 20 lineups don't cash, it's not the end of the world for me, and I'm trying to maximize the potential of me getting the optimal lineup or me getting a lineup that isn't owned. Like I've noticed a lot this year that I'm getting lineups that aren't duplicated, and so that's good. They're scoring high. They're not, obviously I haven't taken anything down this year. I've come close, but I haven't been able to take it down without having a duplicated lineup and stuff. So that's really the direction that I'm going in. Yeah, I think that's about it. It's maximizing your potential that the lineup can do with low ownership, and that's why I play so many quote unquote bad plays or whatever, because if it works out, it's going to be good. If not, I'm okay with it not working out. I'm just making those lineups to hopefully be different.
Yeah, and you got to take a little bit of swings like that, especially in GPP. But let's get to I see this is why. If Ryan was here, we wouldn't have got so deep off the rails, but I think that's a good combo. Let's get into Richmond a little bit more. We can kind of run through some of these guys. I know we've talked about most of them. We'll just start at the top. I think that's probably the best way to go through the starting order. Truex, yeah, he's probably the top 2 favorite to dominate this race on probably everybody's list this week. So Denny Hamlin, another guy, probably top 3 on everybody's list. Disagree with any of that. Probably going to have Truex Hamlin exposure this week, right?
So I need to look back in my notes because I can't find it right now.
What are you looking for?
I totally went off. Truex does better in cool conditions, right? Like in night races. I have this written somewhere, but I can't find it off the top of my head.
I've heard 2 different freaking stories about Truex. He's great on a hot slick track, or he's great at night. I mean, he's good. I mean, at Richmond, pretty much everywhere, right? I mean,
the only reason I say that is because I think the daytime helps. Like in a nighttime race, if your setup is dialed in, you're going to pull away from the field. Not necessarily Truex, just the car in general. Whereas in a daytime, it opens the door for more people to cut through the field or have a chance at being faster because the conditions are a lot more challenging. That's why I was just checking to see.
I do buy that as far as like Truex. I mean, like it wouldn't surprise to see Truex stumble out of the gate because I mean he didn't start off the race at Martinsville very fast. Phoenix this year he didn't start off very fast. So I don't think you're playing Truex thinking like he has to lead right off the bat. He's just that team's just been good all year and they were able to make the adjustments. I mean he's been fast. 41 fast laps at Martinsville. I don't have to tell you 52 fast laps at Phoenix. Those are all tracks that correlate. I mean, great last year at Richmond, 3rd best average running position. I don't have his dominator points right here in front of me, but is that enough to maybe make you think that you're gonna fade it? That's probably not enough to fade him, right? Maybe just to maybe reduce your.
No, I'll probably do what I did last week and have roughly 20 to 30% exposure to everybody across the top 10. The reason I was looking that up, and because at Phoenix, obviously Logano was fast, but you saw other guys go through the field, aka Truex late, because they came up with a setup that if it wasn't right, they knew what to change, and that's also important to know or to see in a driver. But you had Truex be quick, Larson be quick, like Elliott struggled; he wasn't as fast as some people thought he would be.
And that's the next guy we don't have to have this on this list is Chase Elliott. Like, what do we do with Chase? I mean, I pulled up I calculated compiled all the data from the season so far, and Chase Elliott right now ranks just above Justin Haley in terms of value returned this year in DK. I mean, he's been fast though, right? He's averaging 12 fastest laps a race. So it's not like he hasn't had the car. He's had some circumstances, but I mean, at some like, are you at the point where you got to see it out of Chase? I'm probably not gonna play any Chase again this week. I'm just going to wait to see that team turn it around.
I'll probably have him in three lineups. But if you look at the races that he struggled in, Obviously, Phoenix, he didn't have the fastest car. He was still able to come through the field, but he wasn't as fast as we thought he would be. Vegas, he had that damage from nearly destroying the car when he spun out or when he got wrecked, and then he blew a motor at Atlanta. And so, it's a lot of incidents that are hurting him that's outside of his control. So it's not necessarily that car not performing well. He's just been in very bad situations. But if you look at the top 10, he's certainly, like my fifth or sixth favorite guy going in. Like
I would definitely. There's probably 4 or 5 guys I would put ahead of him going in, which is probably why he's not going to probably make my pool.
Yeah, I would much rather, like, if I had to rank him, I think that'll be a better indicator of how we like him. Like, if I had to rank him going in, it'd probably be Larson first, Truex, Hamlin, Logano, Blaney. Those would probably be my top 5 that I would go, and then it'd be Elliott after that. And I think that'll represent how I approach this in terms of ownership on these guys.
See, I agree with a lot of that. Like Larson, Truex, Hamlin's probably my top 3. I'm not really sure what order they're in yet, but I'm actually liking Logano a little bit more probably than Blaney in this race. Blaney has he's obviously, we talked about that, he struggled last year at Richmond, but I mean Logano is a guy that I don't think a lot of people are going to be on this week since he kind of choked off the pole last week. I mean, best average running position last year at Richmond, third best at New Hampshire. I mean, we've went over this on like the last 3 flat track races. That Logano's just been a beast on the flat tracks. He struggled a little bit at Martinsville, but like I said, Martinsville isn't a race that correlates entirely to it. I mean, he was the fastest car at Phoenix, 143 laps led, 38 fastest laps, starting 5th. Going to be on the inside. He's going to have that track position. I like Logano right now a little bit more than Blaney, but like I said, so I guess I'd probably put Truex at Chase at probably about 6 for me because I'd probably put him behind Blaney after Logano.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people don't like I like everybody here, I got to play everybody, but this is really how you're having to approach it this year. You're really having to either make a lot of lineups or just really guess correctly. Because the guy I don't have the ownership for every winner so far this year, or the guy who's dominated this year, but obviously last week Hamlin.
It's very rarely the guy we think it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean Hamlin was at 28%. Logano at the dirt track wasn't, the projected guy to lead laps. No. Obviously that's a different circumstance, but you still know. Blaney and Larson at Atlanta, I think Blaney was a bit higher than Larson, but Larson led that mostly the whole race. I don't think he was in the top 3 in terms of ownership.
I'm an idiot. I can pull
bring that up. Yeah. Look up the guy who's led or who's gotten the most hog points and look at their ownership in terms of where they are. Because I think that
you want hog points, or you want to know who won the race? Hog points total for the year.
Let's do hog points.
All right.
If you got their ownership, because I think that'll be an interesting stat to look at. And that's more of how DFS players are approaching it this year. Because it hasn't been the favorite, and I guess that's another thing to consider when you're making lineups or looking at Vegas favorites and stuff. Like even if they're a favorite, they're not carrying that ownership, or they're not they might lead a good portion of the race, but they don't win it.
We have it right here. Okay, Dom points. Best of the season so far has been Kyle Larson, 114 Dom points at Atlanta, 38% owned. Denny Hamlin, 105 Dom points just for this week at Martinsville, 28% owned. Then after that is Logano, 52 points at Phoenix, 23.63% owned. 52 points at Martinsville, again, Blaney, 28% owned. Then we had Larson again at Vegas, 51 Dom points, 16% owned. So he's the lowest so far at Vegas, which is the 4th race of the season, mm-hmm. So before everybody was in on Larson. Then William Byron, 40 Dom points at Homestead, 25% owned. So all of them are still over 20% owned.
They're all, yeah, but if you look at the last 3 or maybe not,
Truex right after that, 39 Dom points at Phoenix, 11% owned.
So what would you say there? That's kind of 60% being guys who are high owned performing well, then close to probably 40% of guys who are not the highest owned guy, or certainly not the favorite.
Let's sort it by ownership of the highest owned guys and how they did. Highest owned guy so far, that was Reddick at Homestead at 55%, but he's not a factor for dom points. So let's go. Martin Truex Jr. at Atlanta was 43% owned and scored 2 Dominator points. Started second, a spot we all loved, right? 2 Dominator points. After that, we had Kevin Harvick at Vegas, which this was before we all knew Kevin Harvick sucked. 39% ownership, 0.45 dom points. So
1 fast lap.
So yeah, the best performance out of anybody who was higher than 38% owned was Kyle Larson at Atlanta.
That's interesting. Being this far into a season, seeing that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, that's what I did in my free time.
Interesting. That's good stuff. I don't know if other people are really considering that. I'm not saying, purposely fade the guy who has the most ownership, but I think that represents that we all don't know what we're doing here.
Yeah, it just shows you. We all thought Truex was going to smash spot in Atlanta, and he shit the bed on us. And so it's possible. And that's just explain. It doesn't tell you that to fade Truex. It means play lines without Truex too.
Yeah. Or this last week was a good example from both races. Hemrick and Logano were, they were talked about here and there, but they weren't considered as the top 3 guys to go out and lead lineups. And they both ended up being optimal in their respective races, or at least in the winning lineup in both respective races. So I think you got to play everybody inside the top 10 in at least one lineup. That's what I'm going to do entering this weekend at Richmond.
I get it. Even Kyle, right? Yeah, Kyle, you never know. He can show up, which we'll get to Kyle Busch later. We have a host who may have taken Kyle Busch and is 2 for 1 for some reason coming up.
And
all right.
The 1 and
This is the 1 and done, 2 and done, whatever it is. So, okay, we touched on these guys. Christopher Bell, you kind of talked about. I like Christopher Bell this week. We've talked a lot about how he's seemed to have taken a step forward, especially on these short tracks. This has kind of been his bread and butter. I'm repeating the same thing I've said the last couple of weeks, but it shows true. He had the 8th best average running position at Martinsville, 7th best at Phoenix. He's even getting some fast laps in there, 14 at Martinsville, 10 at Phoenix. So, I think you could easily project Christopher Bell for a top 8 finish this week and around 7 fastest laps. I don't think that's crazy. And top 5 upside is not out of the question either for him. So.
Yeah, no, he did win at the road course. I still use road course data for the short tracks and these. So, you can make a case for everybody inside the top 10. Yeah. Harvick and Kyle seem to be, almost
the forgotten guys, right? But are they going to be priced up, though? They're starting 9th and 10th. You see what they did with Keselowski last week was price him up to $11K. So, it's going to kind of go against the narrative they price Kyle Busch or Harvick at $11K. I don't think they'll price Harvick up there, though.
I think they'll price him both. I think Harvick will probably be in the high 9s again. Probably Kyle in like a 10-2 situation, 10-3, probably somewhere around there.
Let's talk. We have not talked at all yet about another guy who's going to be priced up in this range, Brad Keselowski, starting 20th. What are you thinking about Brad Keselowski here starting 20th? He's going to be priced at a point where he's going to need Dominator points. And it's not like we haven't seen him do it at Richmond. And at least my initial thoughts is, like I said, Martinsville, he ran bad there last year, ran bad there this week. So I'm not looking too much into that. But it's just a question on if he can get to that traffic enough to put up I'm looking at he's going to need to be putting up 30 fast laps at least if he's going to finish top 5 there. But still, that's only going to be like a 5x, right? It depends on where he's priced at. He's going to pale in comparison to a guy who puts up 100+ points like what we just saw earlier. So where are you looking at on Keselowski?
So I am not playing Keselowski for a place differential play. The only way he's going to make my lineups is in the lineups that I project him to lead laps, as a dominator. Even in cash, because I assume he's going to be one of the most expensive guys. He'll probably be 10-8, unless they really, misprice him. If he's under, 10-2, I think he can fit in a lot of lineups easily. So I would imagine he's priced up. So in those, like I said, in those lineups, based on his price, he'll probably be, my projected second dominator in those lineups. As I would want somebody leading before he's going to get up in the race, just like, NFL Showdown or whatever you play in terms of Showdown. You need to make a case. You need to make a story for that lineup. And so if I'm playing Keselowski, he needs to be the guy who either takes over at the end of the competition caution or at the end of stage 1 and then leads, either stage 2 or towards the end of stage 3. But he needs to lead enough to, pay off his price and work in the, winning lineup or situation like that.
Yeah, and that's this. Let's just kind of look at something I wanted to look back on at these guys who did get priced up right in these races, starting back around that 20th price range, and where ownership we saw on those come in at. Like we had Kevin Harvick at Phoenix, started 18th, was priced at 11.9. I'm not sure we're going to see Keselowski that high, but they priced him at 11 last week, so he could be 11.9, right? That's 24% ownership, so people liked Harvick there. We had Kyle Busch, Homestead, priced at 11.8, started 24th. 19%. So not really great ownership there. Martinsville, Kyle Larson, nobody played him, started 19th, 18%. I think the next one with Kyle Busch, who started 14th at Vegas and only came in at like 11%. So I think you're going to find, Keselowski is probably going to come in under 20%. But then again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. But the optimizers are probably going to like him. So
I was going to say the difference between Keselowski and those plays there is, Kyle Busch starting 20th isn't the most confident play to lead laps. Like we haven't entered a single race in the last year and a half where Kyle Busch could lead laps here, or Kyle Larson at Martinsville. All the data did point to him not performing quote unquote well at the track. He finished well, but he didn't lead laps. He didn't do anything like that. Whereas Keselowski at Richmond, the data would point to him, he should be able to lead in this race. And, easily, baking in 15 place differential points here.
He's going to be the easy projected guy. He's going to be the easy guy that everybody's going to project. You're right.
Yeah. I think he should be considered in a lot of lineups. If just based on the data, like obviously they could show up and not be fast, but everything's pointing towards Keselowski being probably
very good.
Probably top 3 in terms of DraftKings points per 1,000 if everything goes the way it should, based on what the data says.
Right. Yeah. If you play him as a third dom and he gets up there and scores 30 40 fastest laps, and then you got one of the other big guys, he's going to put up enough points to definitely carry it. Yeah, I was coming into this maybe not thinking about playing Keselowski, but I might have to broaden my pool just a touch and add a little bit of exposure to Keselowski this week. Especially because the upside, right? He can fucking win this race and lead 150 laps.
Yeah, and that's why I started this with I'm not playing him for place differential. I'm playing him in lineups that I expect him to.
If you're constructing a 2 dominator lineup, he's in it. He's one of those 2. If you're constructing a 3 and he's in it, he's one of those 3.
Yeah. It's similar to places like in all the the value plays that we've seen this year. I'm going out of my way to purposely play guys. I'm not playing them because I land on them. At the end of my lineup, I'm playing guys in the 5K or 6K range because I'm going out of my way to get them in lineups.
Yeah, and let's kind of circle down to some of these guys who we think might be value on this slate, because value. We want to talk about value busting at Martinsville. Jesus Christ. I think every value play between like 7K and 5K busted. It was just the back markers with the 15-car pileup kind of came through for value. And value has been a struggle, I think, all season as far as just finding those guys. And really what we've noticed is a lot of those guys starting like 10th through 20th who are priced in that mid 5K range seem to be the guys to target for value. So in that range, well, no, it's not going to be Dillon. It's going to be priced up. Buescher is going to be a guy who's going to be probably priced in that 6,400 range, probably a little lower now that he's starting 12th. Any interest in Buescher here at Richmond?
So, yeah, I think we need to preface this with, and obviously it depends on what salaries do, because it could yet again point us in a situation where LaJoie is just the play at a certain range. But looking at the back half of the field, you get Smithley, LaJoie, McLeod, Haley, Cody Ware, Quinn Hoff, Josh Bilicki, basically covering the 30s. Obviously, have Cindric starting last, and then in the 20th ranges to where we expect kind of a lot of these quote unquote value guys to finish. Like you have Alfredo starting very similar to where he should finish. Dave or Jones starting. You could argue starting close to where he should finish. Briscoe, Preece, McDowell, maybe give these guys, 5 or 6 places up on the grid, but they're quote unquote starting around where they should finish.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's going to be primarily the 6K range or the 5K range. Maybe Stenhouse will be cheap again. Busher will be cheap again. People like Austin Dillon, Newman, but the value range here, if you're not going all the way down to the 4K range, should be separated by, I would argue, maybe 6 or 5 points between each driver. So it's going to come down to a very small number of DraftKings points or FanDuel points to really separate huge chunks of lineups. Or like, I think in every GPP, I think first through probably 200 would be separated by maybe 11 or 12 or maybe 20 points, just due to the value, only being separated by, those 6 points that I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's obviously very possible. But I mean, that's like when you're looking at the value, like a typical I do is like to look at the guys who might be able, who obviously have the upside, like a Daniel Suarez this week. He'll probably be popular. I don't think he's going to be priced in that low 5K range. Obviously, he's probably closer to 7K, but he's a guy who I mean, he's not that 5K value, but Suarez is a guy who's going to provide a lot of value on the slate if he gets priced around 7K. I mean, that car's been just strong for weeks now, and the thing about watching Suarez is that team just has not given up in a race this year. Like, they've faced adversity, and just to see them clawing back, I mean, week after week. You gotta like that, especially you gotta like rostering a guy like that who you know is just going to continue to fight and just not going to give up halfway through the race in a team like that. So Suarez is going to be a guy who can offer a lot of value. I'm not going back on the Alfredo sauce this week. I'm not doing it. I got lucky last week. It worked out. I'm not going to try to back the Alfredo train. This is actually that range I actually did do some projections in, like Briscoe. Man, like, I don't know what to do with Briscoe anymore. I think he could probably run maybe top 22. I mean, it seems like these races he struggled like out of the gate, like in all these races, but he tends to kind of pull it together a little bit as the race goes on and runs better as long as he's still in the race and still has fenders on the car. So this being a 400 lap race, a long race, I think it's a race that he's not going to blow the doors off of it out of the gate, but I think he could etch up into top 22, top 21, which isn't extraordinary value. But I think this just what value has become now in this range. It's like 4x now. Like, there's just not a lot of these. Like, I mean, Busher could be a guy who's got top 10 upside maybe. So that's why you probably play Busher in this, because he's gonna be priced in that range, and he's a guy who could deliver over 5x. I mean, it's not like a lock play, but that's why you'd play him. Reddick, he's not gonna be priced that low. Stenhouse is gonna be priced low again. Right, he's a guy I'm going to be back on the Stenhouse right, because he can probably going to run top 15, not kill your lineup, and that's really kind of what you're looking for in this range.
And I'm glad you brought up Stenhouse, because plays like if you let me try and think of who's going to be priced similar to Stenhouse. Let me imagine that you have Michael McDowell and Stenhouse separated by 100 points or $100 in terms of salary. Stenhouse will lock in the play unless McDowell can finish, like 17th or 18th around there, just based on where Stenhouse starts. All Stenhouse has to do is hold on to that. But say the opposite happens, to where Stenhouse loses, 4 positions, and then McDowell pretty much holds where he runs.
Right.
That forces McDowell into it, or that makes McDowell outscore Stenhouse by like 1 or 2 points. And so that's why I brought up earlier is I think the value this week is going to be separated by very few points. And I think that's going to really maybe annoy people. And I think you need to really open your player pool, and at least in terms of value, maybe not in terms of your whole player pool, but I would much rather have a wide range of value plays that I want to play versus, 2 or 3 and then spreading out at the top of my lineup.
Right. If you're looking from a pure GPP standpoint, though, you would agree that like Stenhouse and Busher probably have a lot more upside over Michael McDowell, right? I mean, Stenhouse could run top 10. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if he wound up in the top 10, top 8. And it really wouldn't surprise me if Busher finished top 9, top 8. So I think those guys have the ability to put up that 6x, where Michael McDowell, you're just saying, get me 4x and get me out of here.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I keep coming back to Chastain a lot this year. The ownership isn't there.
Nobody's playing him.
Well, he 27% last week. That's a bit high, but he was still like the 9th or 10th highest owned guy. But Chastain's the definition of a guy that I'm going out of my way to make sure Chastain's in a lineup. And
Yeah, he's
I don't
been
know,
like
like
top 18, top 19, and people ain't playing. Let's see his ownerships. Yeah, last week sucked 27%. Before that, it was 3. Oh, that was at the Daytona Road Course. Why is this not ordered right? Okay. 8.7, 8, 9, 22, and 3. Yeah, so before the 27%. And where's he starting at this week? He's starting higher up than 27, so no one's going to play him again this week, right?
yeah, I think he'll be 18th, and
He's starting 18th. Yeah, yeah. And he can definitely run top 16 probably. And I mean, he could obviously finish top 16, and that's going to be pretty good value probably where he's priced at, because he's going to be cheaper than he was last week because he's moved up. Let's see, where was he priced at last week? 6,300. So yeah, he might dip down below that 6K mark, at least right around that 6K.
yeah, let's see. When I played him at Atlanta, he started 21st and finished 14th. And I think he had a couple fast laps in there, but he did 37.35 fantasy points. And I mean, that's not sexy by any standard, but that was a good play at Atlanta. And this is very similar to, I know he's starting a bit higher than that this week at Richmond, but I mean, I see that as being the exact same play to where people, kind of see Chastain of, I don't want to play a guy who's only going to pass 3 cars or can only give me 2 or 3 place differential points, but that might be enough to, outscore that value of.
Yeah, they forget about you're still getting top 15 as opposed to finishing 22nd,
Yeah. Yeah.
In the same way with another guy in that range is going to be Ryan Newman, I think, right starting right behind him. I don't think a lot of people's going to play him. He's a guy who we've shown. I mean, you got to like what you've seen out of that program, Roush, this year. I mean, I know the only concerning thing is, as good as they looked at Martinsville and as fast as they have been on the 1.5 miles, I mean, Phoenix was a track they struggled at. So I was curious to see if that correlates over. But I mean, I think you should definitely have some Newman ownership at the price he's going to be at. I mean, he probably could. Top 15 is not out of the question, and we've seen this team make gambles with pit stops and finding ways to make track positions. So finding them way inside the top 10 halfway through this race and holding that track position. You know how hard Newman is to pass. I mean, I don't mind. He's a guy who, like I said, has that ability to hit maybe 6x. He's got that top 10 upside, and that's what you need to look for in these value range.
Yeah, I think with that, I'm going to move to, like last week, my projections were showing that there was going to be an ugly punt play that worked. That was just how the lineups were looking at it. And it ended up being James Davidson. I know we had Rex, and so you might be like, oh, well, that's because of Rex happened. But, last week was a week that I went in figuring
Are you doing
that
again this week?
So
It depends on what you see what the value is.
it depends on what the pricing is. Because, like I said, we might be forced to where it's either Haley, LaJoy, and like you're building lineups with those guys, expecting them to finish 27th, 28th. And
did you just not like any of the value last week? Is that why you're on those guys down there?
Well, no, because I was building 3 dominator lineups, and so my highest projected lineups had people like Davidson, had people like BJ McLeod, had people like Quinn Hoff popping up, and it was more than normal. So I figured that's just how the lineup would end up working with one of those guys, and I think it's going to be like that again this week. Or let me change that. I don't think it's going to be like that again this week. Just because. No.
It's Richmond.
Sorry.
It's Richmond. We're Richmond. It's clean and green, right? We're going to see clean and green. Not a lot of cars dropping out of this race. It's going to be a lot of green flag runs. To finish well here, you're going to have to run well. I mean, you're not going to pass a bunch of red cars. You're not going to get a lot of cautions to save you and get your laps back. I mean, it's like they say it's a short track, but it's 1.5 miles pretty much. That is 3/4 of a mile long.
Yeah, sorry, I misspoke there. I was doing too much in my mind. But yeah, so the reason I like yet again going back to the value being separated by a certain amount of points, I think that's going to be because those guys are locked into certain positions. Just because I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of moves in the back half of the field of people really making passes. That's why I think it's either going to be a Haley, LaJoy week or Cindric, or none of the guys in the back, like none of the cheap Rick Ware cars, not a Quinn Hoff, not a BJ card. It's going to be, the value that is risky starting inside the top 26, just hoping they hold those positions.
Yep, that's exactly right. Corey LaJoy is going to be just massive chalk this week. I mean, just massive chalk. Austin Cindric. Let's get to. We've talked about a lot of guys here. Let's get to this last guy here. Austin Cindric. Aston. I don't know why I just called him Aston. He's starting 38th. We saw him in his debut earlier this year was it Atlanta?
Yeah, Hotlanta.
At Hotlanta, started the same position. DK priced him up significantly, what was like $8,700, and everybody bought into it. They're going to do the same thing this week, right? They're going to price him up, and I'm just not going to play him at that price. Are you kind of in the agreement there?
Yeah, I think it's going to be similar, and we need to go
Same
back.
reasons,
People,
right? I mean,
so people really like talking in absolutes here. So I don't think Cindric was optimal at Atlanta, but he scored well. Like a lot of the Cindric lineups were in the top 2%. What did he? Do you have? What
let's
did he
see.
end up scoring there?
I can pull it up.
I don't
Yeah.
remember his exact score, but this is important of why we need to talk about this.
Yep. Let me just give me just 1 second. I just got to get off of my Ross Chastain here and go to Austin Cindric.
Watermelon man. Poor guy's never going to throw another watermelon if he stays in the Cup Series.
Oh man, no. He's 8 races in. Give him a break. Okay. He started 39th, finished 22nd, scored. Oh fuck! Of course I don't have the points in there. Well, I gotta pull another tab into there. I just had Dom points up, and he scored 0.45 Dom points. If that helps anybody. Sorry. Silence is always the best radio. That's what I discovered.
Yeah. We'll
All
get
right.
Phillips.
God damn it, that was. All right, here we go. DK points. 37.45, and he was priced at 8,600. So, what is that about? I mean, that's not good. That's not
Yeah, I
good.
guess my memory is worse.
Less than 4x, right?
I don't remember. Like maybe I'm thinking of another race. Anyway, so depending, like if he's priced up that much, it's not going to work. But depending on what his price is, and if he can score, like if he can score you 45 points, 47 points, and he's not, over 9K or something like that, that's not a bad
But
DK
if
point. Like he's not going to win. Or
sorry, I'm sorry. I don't mean
you're
to cut
good.
you
Like
off.
like he's not going to be optimal, but he'll probably score within. You can make lineups that score within top 7%, top 5% of most contests, and I think that's another thing that people, kind of get caught up on. Like I said, in absolutes, because they're either like, oh, I need to finish first in the contest. Well, a contest pays out. Right. I mean, they're getting worse and worse, but they're paying out top 20%, top 22, top 25% of lineups. And if you make a lot of lineups that finish top 8%, you're still making a lot of money.
Right.
It's not like dead money. So I think Cindric lineups can score well. I think they can get you within the top 8% of lineups. And that's not a bad day. If you're finishing there, you're still making money. I don't think he's optimal, but I think those types of lineups can score well, and I think he'll be very popular in cash if people care about that.
He's going to be popular everywhere. I mean, even like I said, they're going to price him at 8,600. I mean, at least at 8,600. That's what they priced him at last time. I have no reason to drop it down. Everybody bought into it then. I mean, like you said, he didn't destroy lineups. If I projected him to finish right around where it's just crazy. Finish right around 22nd, 20th. Obviously he's in a Penske car. There is upside there, so you should, like you said, you should probably have maybe a little bit of exposure to him. But I mean, I don't even know if I'm gonna have any exposure at that price. If they price him to a point where I think he can hit value, I mean, but either way, wherever they price this guy at, he's going to come in high owned, because they're not going to price him like 95, 10K. They're not going to price him that high. They're going to price him to a point where everybody can play him. And starting dead last, he's going to be the easy market for everybody to go to. And so if he comes in at 35%, it's like, do you think he's got that? Do you think he's a 2-to-1 to finish top 20? Because I think he's more like definitely not.
Probably maybe 3-to-1 to do that. I think the Eric Almirola play last week was similar to what we're going to see there. Eric Almirola came in at 28% last week.
He was 8,100 though. He was a lot cheaper.
So I think
Eric Almirola, I think
they're going to price Cindric down a little bit. I don't think he'll be that expensive.
Maybe because it's a flat track. Maybe they will. I mean, if they price him like you said to that 8,078, then you can. I'll probably land on a little bit of Cindric, but just if they price him where they did last time, I don't think I can play him.
The last thing I want to say with Cindric is, yet again, you're going to have to go out of your way to play him in lineups, and I think his playing him in a lineup restricts you from a 3-dominator lineup, and I don't think a lot of people are going to go in a 3-dominator lineup again. I think most are going to do two dominators, 2 place differential plays, and then 2 value plays, and so just keep that in mind of what not playing Cindric allows you to do. So one, you're not playing Cindric, and two, the lineup construction that he didn't allow you to make with him in your lineup, you can now do. And so that's gonna make your lineup different from the field as well.
Yeah, if you're adjusting your lineup to take out a guy who you think can score dominator points to put in Cindric, then yeah, that's not the move to go.
Yeah. Let's see. I think we've about covered everybody in here. Is there anybody else you want to touch on? I like Bubba Wallace.
So
I think
I'm sorry. You're going, yeah, Bubba Wallace. Let's talk about Bubba. Yeah, I do like Bubba this week. I think he's going to, top 15, definitely he's going to be another guy. Like this whole range that we just talked about. Like, Stenhouse, Bubba, Chastain, Newman, they're all going to be priced, like you said, and then maybe that Bubba's probably going to be priced a little bit higher, 68, 69 probably, but he's got the upside. We saw how he ran in Phoenix. He was running inside the top 6, top 7 at one point, right at Phoenix. Had a fast car there. Definitely think he's got top 10 upside to go, or at least can probably run in that top 15 and not crush your lineup if he's priced right.
Yeah, obviously it depends on pricing, but with the exception of Preece, Suarez, McDowell, I might just have a player pool of people starting inside the top 20.
I like it, yeah. Especially at a track like Richmond. We know how quickly this track gets spread out and how long the green flag runs are and how everybody just stays there. We all look at each other like, damn, why didn't I just play the top 10? Yeah, so yeah, I don't hate that one bit. So you're really looking at leaning towards that another 3 dominator type build this week.
I do that I mainly just do that in general for most races, but especially the ones that are 400 laps, 500 laps. Races that are 300, I could lean more towards chasing place differential and having 2 dominators. But when there's this many laps, and in a case of where, yet again, I don't think one guy's going to run away with the race, they might. But if you're, the more darts you throw trying to get a bullseye, the bullseye being the guy who leads the most amount of laps, the better the chance you have. And so,
especially at a track like this where when that bullseye hits, you're scoring 140, 120 points. That can kind of make up for a guy who puts up 40 who you paid 10K for.
Yeah, and so I'll probably do 3 again. Unless I can make 2, that's why I said my player pool might be inside the top 20, because that's a situation where I'm okay having 2 dominators, because everybody else that's inside the top 20 can fight for a top 10 and could go out and lead laps. Like we saw Wallace last week. I know that was a pit road call, or the definition of not, because he stayed out and he stayed out to lead laps, but that situation where that's kind of what I want to see from guys who have top 10 potential, is guys who have, who could lead laps or who could get fast laps. You mentioned Suarez, that team not giving up this year. We've seen multiple times when they say that, hey, we don't have the car, we're going to stay out and try and get a caution. And what does that mean? That means they lead laps for us. That means that, hey, they might get fast laps either on a restart because they're either getting the wave around, coming to the green, they get that fast lap, or yet again, like I just said, they stay out under green and lead laps. And if some goof is going to stay out and lead laps, it's nice to at least have him in the lineup, because that's
right.
Yeah, those are hog points that he's basically stealing from the top performers, and it's going to a value play. So Wallace last week did that. Suarez at Las Vegas did that. LaJoie did it as well. And so when I'm looking at guys who may not, could win the race, but who might do, things like that where they stay out, that also makes me lean towards Wallace a lot this week, or Matt DiBenedetto.
And I guess you could try to squint and say, oh, Suarez is going to be a high own, but if we've looked at the way value ownership is shaped out over the past few weeks, it hasn't really. Like, LaJoie is obviously probably going to be chalk, but outside of him, I think you're going to see a lot of these other guys priced around, owned around like that 17-22% owned mark. I don't think you're going to see anybody crazy owned outside of him, so I wouldn't stray off of Suarez if you think he's going to be high owned. And regardless, I think he's a great play anyway. Like I said, unless it priced by the 8K.
Yeah, that'll all change. But we're recording this on Tuesday, so we'll just have to see what comes out. I guess we can go ahead and head to our one and done situation here. I know Ryan isn't here. He's chosen Kyle Busch. I'm kind of spoiling that for everybody. He's chosen Kyle Busch.
I spoiled it, yeah, already. What the
last
fuck
week
is he thinking? Tell me.
last week he took Joey Logano into with 33 points. You chose Ryan Blaney, 46. I chose Martin Truex Jr., which you guys gave to me because I was like, hey, I'm out of town. I'm taking him. I didn't give you any other guys to go off of. So right
I
now,
was like, I guess we gotta fucking give Brandon Martin Truex here because we have nothing else to give him.
yeah. So the points right now, I'm leading right now at 314. You're at 304. Ryan's at 235. He's got the first pick this week going for Kyle Busch. I think he sees something that we don't.
That's what I was. I wish he
him.
was here so I could ask him. Like, what's he see that we don't?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Who do you want to take? Are you gonna? Let's see. You can't take Chase Elliott more.
I'm looking. I'm looking to see
gonna...
who I've used here. I've used Larson. Used Blaney. Who the fuck haven't I used in here? Oh, I haven't used Denny Hamlin. Give me Denny Hamlin.
All right, you're going to go with Denny Hamlin. I'm going to use a guy that I'm not too comfortable with, but I just kind of want to burn him and get rid of him, at least with one of my plays. So I'll go with William Byron. I think he'll run top 10 pretty much this whole race.
Shit.
And
I'm going 50% Byron. I know he's going to fucking dominate now.
That's another thing. I've picked a lot of winners this year, being stuck on a one and done. And I haven't picked anybody.
Man, stage points. You need to get those stage points. I was glad Blaney saved me by winning the first two stages, and then Blaney cost me so much that fucking air gun incident.
Yeah, let's talk about Blaney really quick because I wasn't here to talk about Bristol Dirt a whole lot, and I don't want to turn this into a Bristol Dirt discussion, but I was annoyed as a fan for Hamlin not moving Logano out of the way for a Bristol win. Like, that makes no sense to me. But you're gonna ram Blaney out of the way for a stage win. Yeah. Like at the end of stage one, he nearly turned Blaney trying to win the stage, and why are you doing this?
Don't you think that like the week prior was in his head though when he got behind Blaney and he just like not a fucking again? Like, I mean, that had to be in his head, right? And he just maybe he felt like he missed an opportunity to send a message, and he felt like he wanted to do it this time.
I don't know, man. That's just weird,
But wasn't everybody moving everybody get around anybody at Martinsville this week?
Yeah, but man, Denny race is so weird. He chokes so many races. That's why he's not a champion. He does not have it when at the end of races, when it counts at the end of the season. He just doesn't have it.
I think he'll put it together at some point in his career. I don't think he's gonna go his whole career without a championship. He brought this too good. I mean, we've seen this week. Kid's been a beast. I mean, has he finished outside the top 5 yet? I mean, who's your contenders this year going to the championship? I mean, it's got to be what? Hamlin, Truex, Larson, based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, probably Hamlin.
And you got to put Chase because he's got the old Dale Earnhardt Senior point system going on.
Well, Elliott has NASCAR going on, so I'm sure he'll make it to the Final Four again. But yeah, Hamlin is. I don't think he'll ever win it, man. He's come close a lot of times, and he's choked it away a lot. He's choked races away.
I hope he does. I used to hate Denny Hamlin. I used to hate him when he came into this series, but I just he's grown on me over the years. I like the way his personality has changed. He seems like he's actually developed a personality. Before he didn't have a personality. It seemed like every time he'd win, he'd get out and not know what to do and would say dumb shit all the time. And now, like, I don't know. I think I hope he wins one. I think he can. I mean, to think he can't win a Phoenix race, like he can win at fucking Phoenix if he's there.
Yeah, I don't know. Hamlin's weird to me. He's so weird.
I mean, he's won 3 Daytona 500s. That's pretty clutch too.
That's because that's the start of the season. He doesn't have anything to choke away. Yeah, that's weird. Who's your favorite driver right now in NASCAR? Is it Chastain?
I don't really like I like Chastain. Like I don't really have a favorite driver. I kind of like got out of the whole favorite driver stuff back when Earnhardt died, really. It was when it all kind of started. Because, back when I loved Jeff Gordon, it was because my dad and my brother loved Dale Earnhardt. Mm-hmm. So, I was on the opposite side of the house. I always be able to. And plus, this was when Gordon was good. So I was able to just rub it in their face all the time because Gordon was winning and Earnhardt was struggling towards the end of his career. And it was great. And then, once Earnhardt died and, that aspect of it went away, I kind of, I guess it was kind of weird to still root for Jeff Gordon there with my dad and my brother. So I kind of just moved over and liked Bill Elliott, and because I always liked Bill Elliott, so I just made him my favorite driver. And then once he retired, I'm like, well, I just like watching the races. Like I have guys that I don't like and guys that I like to see do well. And it goes in phases. Like there was a time I hated Truex seeing him win, but now I don't mind. Like it's just weird. Like I think I have more guys that I root against than I root for.
Yeah, I certainly have more guys that I'm like, I either don't like him or don't have an opinion on him. I was a Stewart fan. I like Jimmy Spencer a lot. I like Kurt Busch back when he was more vocal, even Keselowski back when he was more vocal. But those would be the guys that I would like. It's hard for me to find somebody. I mean, I like chaos. So like Gregson's probably the guy that I'll root for coming up because he's pretty disruptive, and I like anybody with an actual personality.
Yeah, I kind of liked Kyle for a while because he was just kind of like everybody hated Kyle, and like
I like Kyle
kind of
too.
like that, like yeah, fuck off, guys.
Yeah.
Because I like the guy, like you said, personally, I like guys who don't hold back, and Kyle's a guy who is going to just tell NASCAR he's gonna just be an asshole, like his whole next question, or what did he do? It wasn't next question, that was somebody else, where he was just ignoring the question, and or I'm gonna go out there and have it, or I don't know. He just the way he is with the media sometimes is funny, and he can be an asshole, and I like seeing him cheer like seeing him getting out there and the crowd's booing him and his fist pumping. So makes a good heel.
Yeah, and last point here is like I like guys who get annoyed or who get who not I guess angry. I can't think of another word, but in like the right sense. Like I don't like when Truex gets mad at his teammates for racing him when he's like, "Why is he racing me so hard?" And blah blah. Like, come on, shut up, Truex. Whereas Kyle Busch, is yelling at guys who literally don't have talent being on the track. Like, I like Kyle in that situation more than Truex complaining about his own teammate racing him too hard or situations like that. Where like Chase doesn't have a personality to me.
He doesn't. No, he does. He always seems awkward. Like he doesn't know what to really do. He's not comfortable with the limelight yet, or something. He's always been like that. Yeah, it's like he doesn't. Weird, yeah. Like when you see him in any promos or anything, he always looks. Yeah. I get what you're saying. He doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole Elliott phenomenon is weird. I know, like all the Truex fans, or not Truex, all the junior fans went to Elliott because of his dad and everything. But like he's boring. He's just like his dad. His dad was pretty, white collar, by the book, just here to race clean, not here to ruffle any feathers. Whereas Earnhardt was the exact opposite of that. But yeah.
I could be. You could talk me into being a Stenhouse fan. We wouldn't be celebrating many wins, but
let's talk.
He's a fun guy to watch, man. Like, and he's been good this year. I mean, what is that? I think it's 13 straight races without a DNF.
Yeah, we'll end it with Stenhouse here. Is Stenhouse gets a lot of flack for like I think he's overhated, or like especially in this community of like Wrecky Spinhouse. Oh, his name is Spinhouse. He only wrecks like. Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. Yes, he does.
It
wreck
is funny, right? Especially when he goes through a stretch of where you play him like the 3 times in a row. The 3 times you play Stenhouse out of like 6 weeks, and he fucking wrecks. So yeah, I get that, right? He does go through. He has went through those kind of stretches in his career.
Yeah, but that gets annoying. Like everything I watch, they always call him Ricky Spinhouse.
People think you're crazy when you tell him to play him too. Like I think I have put Ricky Stenhouse in my pool for like 4 fucking weeks, and it's not been a bad play yet. I mean, he's been a good play every week.
Yeah, and it's it's just race by race situations. So, that's how I look at it. That's why I'm
to the point where I think Ricky's going to run top 14 regardless of where we're at.
He's going to make the chase just on points at this point.
Could. If as long as we see if somebody starts stringing together multiple wins and making some point spots available. I mean, what is he like 17th right now, 18th, or is he inside of it? He's inside the chase. Or he's top 12 points. That's right. Yeah, he's top 12.
Yeah, he's running good this year, man. So, nobody's gonna hate on Eric Almirola because he's a nice guy, but we need to come up with a name for Eric. Wrecking Eric. Call the tow truck Almirola. I don't know.
Air Wreck.
Yeah, there we go. Air Wreck. There we go.
Wreck.
If you like his idea, check him out at Free NASCAR DFS on Twitter. check me out on Twitter as well, Brandon Cruz, DFS. You can find Jason's free article for most races. I know sometimes you take a break here and there, but for most races, I'm sure you're going to have 2 for this week for the Truck Series and the Cup Series. You can find my stuff on Patreon at Brandon Cruz DFS. Thank you guys for listening to episode 11. We're making it through the year. I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and I know you guys enjoy listening. I get a lot of feedback each and every week. So thank you guys for tuning in once again, and best of luck this week at Richmond. I think I speak for Jason when I say, thanks for listening once again, and we'll catch you guys next time.